Hi, my name is Carolyn Chen, and my topic for my final project is Chinese immigrants. The first article is called America Was Eager for Chinese Immigrants. What happened? So, Chinese immigrants first came to America during the gold rush, and quickly people turned hostile. Chinese people were likened to slaves by the Californian governor, and when Chinese immigrants got caught in an economic depression, resentment spread nationwide and the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed. Nowadays, Chinese people are considered a model minority. So to analyze this first article, when Americans felt threatened, they made Chinese people feel lesser. When Americans felt threatened, they made Chinese people feel lesser. And they spread misinformation. And history actually obscures this fact because Chinese people, during this time, many Chinese voices were anonymous, which makes people think that they were passive in face of all this, but they weren't. Trump saying China virus and Kung flu has echoes of the Californian Governor Bigler calling Chinese immigrants coolies. This is the latest example of Asian Americans not being as white adjacent as people claim, and shows off the whole model minority myth. Many Chinese immigrants still struggle with a sense of belonging. So on to the second article, which is the Chinese Exclusion Act. So what was this? This is an article that banned Chinese laborers from immigrating to the U.S., refused citizenship, and it was in effect for 10 years, before being extended until basically World War I. So Congress shifted after World War I to quotas because they had to limit immigration from even more countries. Then, during World War II, when China was an ally to the United States, Chinese immigrants were finally able to seek naturalization. So, to analyze this act, once again we see how the government took Chinese laborers as a threat, and this wasn't a ban on all Chinese immigrants. It was just a ban on laborers, but it was so hard to be considered a non-laborer that was basically a ban on all Chinese people. This reminds me of people saying it's not a don't say gay bill. On to the third article, which is countering stereotypes about Asian Americans. So, Asian American as a term is a political term. It's only used in America and applies to a group of people that's not really grouped together in any other circumstance. So, all Asian people are stereotyped as successful and well adapted, which means they're often overlooked when discussing prejudice. Especially the subcategories of different cultures, because, like I said, they're all under this one umbrella term. So the model minority idea showed up in the 1960s and was used to downplay racism. The whole, hey, Asian Americans are great due to their hard will and willingness to try, and that means every other ethnic group can do the same thing, and it basically downplayed the whites' role in racism. Gender racism is actually a big issue that I'll talk about in the analysis, and a lot of these stereotypes result in bullying and a lack of willingness for people to seek help. So, the analysis. Asian Americans are overlooked even though they are a marginalized group. Their voices are suppressed by not even being considered important. Asian Americans are frequently denied leadership opportunities despite being known as super successful. And the gendered racism I mentioned earlier is that men tend to be considered effeminate and asexual. Think of like the members of BTS. Asian women are considered sexually desirable, exotic, and passive. Asian people present severe symptoms of psychological problems, but are less likely to seek help. Part of this is due to stereotypes, part of this is due to the stigma that some cultures have, but many don't look into this. They just assume that Asians face less psychological problems. On to the fourth article, which is called Chinese Immigrants in the United States. It's a collection of statistics, and you can see them all on screen right now. And to analyze these, many people assume that because Chinese immigrants have such a high percentage of advanced degrees, it means they are smarter, the whole Chinese people are smart stereotype. However, this is actually because many people enter as international students or high-skilled workers, and this kind of just perpetuates the stereotype. And many people claim Chinese people are white adjacent, and you can kind of see with such high percentages where the model minority myth comes from. But many forget that Chinese people are still a marginalized group, and are often overlooked and ignored when talking about the issues they face. On to the fifth article. COVID-19 has driven racism and violence against Asian Americans, perspectives from 12 national polls. So, this is also a lot of statistics. Basically, many think Trump is the main reason for this, and this seems to show a public perception of Asian people as perpetual foreigners. So Lacking a sense of belonging has shown up in 4 of the 5 articles. Asian people are being oppressed while simultaneously being shown off as like a model minority. And this is very, very harmful. And the reason why I chose all of these articles is because they all relate to this topic. The only one that this doesn't show up in is the Chinese Exclusion Act, which is very important in the history of Chinese people. And so the favorite thing I learned about is stereotypes and statistics. And here are my citations. Thank you.